The Talking Points memo this evening has liberalism won in America. Last week, radio commentator Rush Limbaugh put forth that because many Americans are ill-informed, liberalism has won the ideological struggle in this country. Mr. Limbaugh believes that the left controls the education system, pop culture, and the media. And he's not wrong about those situations. But I do not believe that liberal thought is now dominant in the USA. However, the country's changing quickly into an entitlement society. It's not so much that apathetic Americans are embracing the tenets of the left. It's just that they're selfish, and they want money for nothing, as Dire Straits once sang. However, there is a big shift in some social matters. In 2001, just 35% of Americans favored gay marriage. Now 48% do. In 2003, just 34% of Americans thought marijuana should be legalized. Now 48% do. So you can see on those issues, big change has occurred. However, in 2002, a Gallup poll asked, do you think it's the responsibility of the federal government to provide all Americans with health care coverage? 62% of Americans back then said yes. It is the responsibility of the feds to provide health care. Now, that number has dropped to 44%, most likely because many Americans don't like the Obamacare law. That is not a liberal trend. So Talking Points believes that we are now in a struggle to define America. The left has powerful agents in the media and pop culture. The right is disorganized and lacks leadership. But if a charismatic conservative leader can emerge and can fight off the media jackals, that person can turn the country to the right. Why? Because inherently, America is a place of achievement. We've always been that. It's true that more Americans today want handouts than ever before, but that can be reversed because of self-interest. Once Americans understand that if the government becomes a nanny state with high taxation everywhere, it'll be 10 times harder for anyone to succeed on a grand scale. There's no question that President Obama and the Democratic Party want to take things away from successful Americans. That is not an attractive proposition to most people, as the polls say. But the right has not been able to articulate the danger of the nanny state and a socialistic philosophy. There have always been selfish Americans. There have always been people who see themselves as victims and want to be paid for their perceived suffering. We've always had that. Now those people are in a comfort zone because their victimization isn't being challenged. It's being encouraged by the Obama administration. But once the nanny state victimization mentality begins to get hammered in an effective way, it will quickly fall apart, as fair-minded, hard-working Americans will reject it. Therefore, the left has not won in America. Not yet. And that's the memo. Now, the top story tonight, reaction joining us from Denver, Mary Catherine Ham. And from Las Vegas, Juan Williams. Both are Fox News analysts. So, the left in America, Juan, is it victorious? Is it about to win? Where is it?
No, I mean, look, the fact is, if you look at governors' mansions around the country, more Republicans are there, more Republicans in state legislatures. So I think what we're hearing from Rush Limbaugh is frustration. I think a lot of people on the right, Bill, are frustrated that President Obama has won twice. They look at the shifting demographics of the country. You know, you go back to the 70s and white men made up about half of all the electorate. Now they're down around 35%. And you know, you can win, as Mitt Romney did overwhelmingly, the white vote in the country and still not win the election. And I think Limbaugh, I mean, I'm a little surprised that he says he's ashamed of America. You know, I feel like someone has turned the world upside down for me. Here I am, and I'm saying I'm proud to be an American. I've never been ashamed of this country. Sometimes the people I vote for don't win, but I don't go around saying I'm ashamed of America. And I think he's just angry and frustrated, like many on the right, that they don't seem to be able to articulate their points or win a national election.
And you say, Mary Catherine?
Look, I think I'm not at all ashamed either, and I don't think it does anybody any good to be ashamed of the people whose votes you're trying to win. I don't think that's the way to go about doing it, but it's fair to be discouraged. I think the histrionics over the sequestration cuts is a pretty good reason to be discouraged if you're somebody who's concerned about spending, and on both sides of the aisle, you've got people freaking out about this minuscule cut, which amounts to less than, for 2013, less than 1 month's deficit from last year. I think when you look at that equation, you think about what's coming up ahead and how many cuts need to be made and how much we actually have to do a fundamental shift in entitlement spending and actually rethink those programs that people are very married to, then yes, you can become very discouraged about how people maybe are taking the memification of politics and, you know, watching bits and pieces on entertainment news and thinking, well, how am I going to explain entitlement spending reform? Like, I think that is a very tough uphill battle, and the sequestration is an example of that.
You're kind of hung up on a policy, and I'm not coming at it from that point of view.
Yeah, because that is an example of how hard the road is.
Yeah, I was interested to hear how you were going to frame it. But look, here's the deal.
Yeah.
You saw the gay marriage and you saw the legalization of marijuana shift. And that shift occurred for two reasons. Number one, a very well thought out campaign by the media, led by people like Ellen DeGeneres, who is right now the most popular personality in the country. And the media embraced it. And number two, the failure on the right to articulate a defense on why you shouldn't have gay marriage. Their argument wasn't strong enough to overwhelm the pop culture media, you should have it. That's number one. So that there is a shift, Juan, in the way people are seeing events and seeing social issues in particular. 30 seconds for Juan, 30 seconds for Marianne. Go.
Okay, but Bill, the country's changing. You ask conservatives today in polls about gays and gay marriage, and they say, it's just not as upsetting them as it was a generation ago.
Yeah, they're pretty much given up.
In California, today, in California, that amendment was defeated by conservatives who didn't like it, and they were able to win.
Conservatives and black Americans won, not just conservative, but African Americans overwhelmingly.
Yeah, but who put
and now their vote is going to be nullified. Their vote could be nullified.
Money up. Okay, absolutely. But let me just finish this point that in response to Mary Catherine and to Rush, that you know what, I don't think it's the case that Americans are uninformed or ill-educated, and that's why they are upset about sequestration cuts. I think that they were informed, and I think Rush lost the argument.
Juan, I said 30, you took about a minute and a half, all right? I disagree. I think there are many, many, many millions of Americans who are uninformed right now. Mary Catherine, 20 seconds, go.
Yeah, well, the media makes a point of people not knowing that the sequestration is not from this to this, but it's from this
I don't want to talk about
this.
We're going to let Britt Hume do that. We're going to let Britt Hume do that.
That is what we're up against. And yes, communicating better is the key. And frankly, on these libertarian issues like marijuana, there's a whole new generation of conservatives that aren't concerned with those issues. And so that is a shift, and you have to find new ways to communicate with conservatives and liberals alike to win them over.